All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we are going to be talking about the new BMW M Ignite system. And if you read the press materials, then you'll see they basically say that this is a highly efficient new development that makes its series production debut in BMW M models and enables a significant reduction in fuel consumption under high loads. The new ignition process is a prime example of the transfer of technology from racing cars to series production models and helps to meet the requirements of the EU7 standard. Now, of course, this is in English, but I feel like it needs a translation. It just isn't quite reading clearly what it should say. So I translated it, and what it actually means is we had to do this because of EU7. It's that simple, guys. Obviously, this is an emissions-driven change, but the good news is the technology is pretty cool and should add a lot of capability to the BMW M cars we all love. And so I did a lot more digging to understand exactly how it works, what the benefits are, of course, what the drawbacks are, and I have some thoughts on some things that could be coming that BMW didn't quite specify, but I think we'll be seeing in the pipeline. So I'll share all of that with you guys in this video so you can have a better understanding of what we can expect. And hopefully you guys find this video useful. Now, before we jump into it, I'm curious, I think probably some of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about, but maybe some of you have already read a little bit into this and have an idea and you just want to get a little more info. So regardless of your current position, what are you thinking right now at the current face value? Do you think this will be a great upgrade that adds a lot of capability to the cars? Or do you think it's just adding a lot of complexity and cost and going to make the cars super expensive and less reliable? As always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment down below and let me know what you're thinking. But let's jump into the details here. So again, this is the BMW M Ignite system, and this is a new technology. They said they patented back in 2024, so they've been working on it for a while, but it is not something that's completely new to the automotive space. What they are going to be implementing is pre-chamber ignition. And the way that this works is we're going to have two completely separate ignition systems. And you can kind of see it in this video that they shared on the BMW M page, where on one side, you're going to have a conventional spark plug and a conventional coil pack that ignites your air fuel mix just like normal. But separate from that, you're going to have a completely separate set of spark plugs and coil packs that are built into these pre-chamber housings. And what a pre-chamber is, it's basically a small cylinder, very similar to your main combustion chamber, just much smaller in size. And it has little holes in it so that air can flow in and out. So the benefit is during the compression stroke, when your piston is moving up, after you've already sprayed some fuel into your air, you've got your air fuel mixture going on, it's going to push some of that air fuel mixture into the pre-chamber. And then you're going to ignite the spark plug inside of the pre-chamber. And when that sparks, it is going to combust the air fuel mix in there and it's going to shoot it out the holes. And I quote, at around the speed of sound. So obviously there's going to be a lot of pressure and velocity built up around that air fuel mixture, but the way that it's going to come out of the holes is going to help ignite the larger air fuel mix in the main combustion chamber, so you get a much more complete and efficient burn. So this might sound very similar if you've looked at like the B58 technical training materials. It shows how they try to optimize the fuel spray pattern from the injector so you can get a more uniform and efficient burn from the combustion chamber. This is kind of matching that, but from the ignition side. So now you're basically igniting a spark inside of that pre-chamber and shooting out a very hot air fuel mixture to burn everything in the combustion chamber much more efficiently. So naturally, that means you're going to get better fuel economy. You're going to get a much more efficient burn. You're also going to burn it faster. You're going to reduce the chance of knock, which can support higher horsepower levels, and it can reduce your exhaust gas temperature. So a lot of benefits that all translate to better emissions. Now, of course, it's not just a hardware change, because if you're going to be adding components, then you also need software in order to control everything. So the way that it generally is supposed to work is under low load, when you're just kind of cruising and driving around. The traditional conventional ignition system will be your main thing that you're using. So it's going to ignite the air fuel mixture. And then after that, the pre-chamber will also briefly ignite to complete the burn. So you're leaning on your conventional ignition system under those low load scenarios because the air is at slow speeds. It's going to be very turbulent and inefficient anyway. So there's not just as much gain to be had during that scenario. Now, under high load scenarios where you're running high boost levels and really shoving air into the combustion chamber, that's when the pre-chamber ignition system is going to shine. So when you've got everything built up, it's going to be able to take advantage of that pre-chamber ignition. Your conventional ignition system won't fire at all, and that will get you the full, complete, and efficient burn that you're looking for. So it's really only focused on those high load scenarios. Now, the benefit there is obviously when you're racing your car, it's going to be much more efficient. And that's where they say that this is race inspired technology that they're pulling from Formula One, because obviously those cars are running wide open throttle a lot more often. And it's imperative, if you want to get as much fuel economy out of those cars, as weird of a concept it might seem, you're going to want something that works more efficiently at high load. And in a race car, that means less pit stops, less needing to refuel, which means you finish your race faster. So obviously a really big benefit for them. Now, the way BMW is marketing this is BMW M cars are also designed to go to the track. And I highlighted in my car, when I go to the track, I usually go through a half tank of gas in a 20-minute session or so. So if you're planning on driving your car and enjoying it as much as possible, the last thing you want to have to worry about is getting off track to fill up in order to get back on. So for an M car, if you're going to be tracking it, this will allow you to get much more seat time without having to worry about, when your fuel is running low and fuel starvation and stuff like that. You'll just get much more time out of the car without having to worry about the annoying stuff. But yeah, with all that in mind, what does it really mean? And in my opinion, there are a couple things that we can take away from this that maybe BMW didn't spell out specifically. The biggest thing is, I feel like this is essentially an S58 TU. They're not calling it as such. They're acting like it's just going to be a rolling change that's implemented in the next couple months, but there are a lot of hardware changes coming with this. It's not just the BMW M-Ignite system. They're also upgrading the turbos to variable geometry turbos. They're also increasing the compression of the engine. And so I feel like there's a lot of things that are going to be happening that could effectively classify this as an S58 technical update or an S58, Gen 2. So we'll see if they ever, name it as such, but this is going to be a pretty significant change. I also think that the M-Ignition system is going to allow it to be much more capable than it used to be. Even though these cars are slated to come out with the exact same horsepower and torque rating, so they're not going to actually add any performance to the cars, the M-Ignite system, like I said, allows it to run a lot more efficiently, so you can make more power with the same amount of fuel. The variable geometry turbos will allow the car to make much quicker spool times down low, but carry much more power up top. So it's going to be extremely capable in stock form. And even the high compression is going to make the car much more responsive. So I feel like overall, there's just going to be a lot more headroom in the car. And another thing I think that's coming, you heard it here first, is port injection. I know this is something that we've all been waiting on, because if you look at the S58 intake manifold, it already basically has provisions for port injection. They're just blocked off. And in the aftermarket, they figured out you can just drill out the holes, install some port injectors, and run it with a reflex and control it like normal. But we always kind of anticipated that if that was already built into the design of the intake manifold, at some point it would come down the line. But CS models came out, CSL models came out, and just none of them have port injection paired with a factory S58 engine. But now that this is coming out, again, in my mind, I'm looking at it as an S58 TU. It's going to be very similar to the Gen 3 B58 that also came out to address some emissions concerns, so that car could be carried into the future. I just feel like this is going to be the time that port injection comes. So I might be wrong. They didn't put it in any of their materials, but all signs are leading to this is when that change is going to happen. But that does bring a downside, because we could have all that capability, and if it's like the Gen 3 B58, it's also going to come with a new DME, which will also require its own unlock, which means we're starting over the clock. So we'll kind of have to wait and see if that is actually the case. It's a little unfortunate because we won't be able to push the platform to see what it's capable of anytime soon. But I think that will definitely be a game changer when that capability comes together. But overall, I don't think this is anything new for BMW. It's basically very similar to what they did with the F87. Originally, that came out with the N55, and then when new emissions requirements came out, they added the S55 and called it the M2 competition and sold it to everybody as this huge performance upgrade, which it did add capability, but they didn't just do it out of the generosity of their hearts. They had to do it to meet these new emissions requirements. And this is the exact same thing. They're going to market it to us as this performance upgrade and something that makes M cars more like race cars. But in reality, I don't think this ever would have come without the EU7 requirements. And we're seeing this across all German brands. Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen, they're all making changes to meet these requirements because, of course, they want to continue selling cars over in Europe. So it should be expected that change is going to have to come. It's just, how it's going to be. The other thing that's interesting is I said initially BMW highlighted that they patented this technology back in 2024. And so I did a little bit of digging and I did find a patent. I don't know if this is the patent. There may be others or something, more inclusive of all of what they're planning on doing. But what this highlights is that they are looking at a way to basically modify a traditional pre-chamber ignition system to work at more different loads. So they have some with like different chambers in the pre-chambers and like a wall or a door that can open and close, it looks like, to allow it to not only operate most efficiently at high load, but also give benefits at low load scenarios. So this looks extremely complex. We'll have to wait and see when it actually comes out in cars, if that actually ends up being implemented, or maybe this was just an idea that they wanted to throw out there and lock in case they could ever make it happen. A patent doesn't actually guarantee anything at the end of the day, but it definitely is something interesting to look at. And I'll have that link down below in case you want to read the patent for yourself. So with all that in mind, you might be wondering, when is BMW M Ignite coming? And the good news is the EU7 requirements are coming very quickly. You actually have to have that stuff implemented by November of this year. So BMW highlighted that we can expect to see the M Ignite system on M3s and M4s in July production vehicles and M2s in August production vehicles. So again, it's going to be coming very soon. Hopefully they will also be issuing a press release for, how they normally do for the new model years or big updates. They'll say it's the new M3 or the all new M2. And maybe in those materials, they'll share more details about the S58. That kind of confirms what I'm already suspecting, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. At this point, they really just focused on the ignition system and tried to highlight that to help build up some hype. So more coming soon, as always, but let me know, has anything I said changed your opinion? Are you leaning one way or the other and how this is going to work? You think these cars are going to be great and in the future everybody will love them? Or is it just going to make things much more complex and more expensive outside of warranty? I guess time will tell with that. But for now, I think that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.